Were early holders just lucky? Or was there some element of skill involved with the fact that they bought Bitcoin early? Let's put it to the test. So, the general idea behind this, and this is something that I've seen usually from poor people, funnily enough, is that the early holders came to Bitcoin. They found Bitcoin through some form or another. They learned about it. They decided to invest in it, and they bought some Bitcoin. And what happened, and maybe they bought Bitcoin in 2011 or 2012, so on. The prices were very depressed. They were very low, very, very cheap to buy Bitcoin. And as the story goes, Bitcoin obviously had its amazing runs, and Bitcoin made a couple 100,000% initial return on investment. And people look at that now in 2019, and they looked at this years ago too as well. They always looked at holders of Bitcoin who were in early. They always said, "Oh, that guy's early. That guy just got lucky. He was just at the right place at the right time, and he had no skill involved. A monkey could buy Bitcoin back then and make all of these returns, and who could have known, right?" So I wanted to make a video that went over a few of these points, a few of these facts, a few of these opinions, and give my own take on it, because I think this topic is actually a little bit more nuanced than most people would be happy to admit. So the normie argument, again, is that people who came to crypto early on are just lucky. I think there is some element of truth to that. So first, I'm going to trigger everyone. There is some element of truth to that. Personally, I will give you personal examples. I know many stupid people and undeserving people who I will actually just call stupid and undeserving. I would never say their names though, but people who obviously have no business making as much money as they have made, but who have gotten unimaginably rich just because they were in the right place at the right time. And this isn't just about crypto. This is about everything. If you're in the gold rush days and you were one of the first people there selling shovels, well, you became a millionaire at the time, or whatever the equivalent of a millionaire was. If you got early on tech stocks, you made a lot of money. If you got early on the internet, you made a lot of money there. If you got early in on the American stock market, in the case of, now, I'm going to say, let's say in the 1960s, and you started investing in the stock market, you started investing in index funds, you made a hell of a lot of returns since then. Only problem is you're super old now. But you get the idea, right? There's times where if you are in the right place at the right time, there are such things and events that reveal themselves to you. And if you capitalize on them, you certainly can make a lot more money, even if you yourself perhaps wouldn't have been able to cut it in the business world, or wouldn't have been able to make it through other forms of investing. Or maybe you're just a habitual loser, but that was your only win, but your win was so large that it cut out all of your losers. It canceled all of them out and put you at levels of wealth that are just have never been, or you could never reach. So there is an element of truth to that, obviously. There's an element of truth, or an element of luck, in the fact that people who got in Bitcoin 2011, you ask them these questions: how did you learn about Bitcoin? It wasn't, oh, I was really interested in investing in cryptographic money because I wanted to get away from the state and all of this. It's actually more like, well, I had learned about Bitcoin from a friend, and I just had a little bit of interest in it, and I bought some just because, and then it made a whole lot of money. That's their entire investment thesis. So you can tell that there was no intent to make a million times your money. There was no process there. There was no due diligence, let's say. There was no concept of, I'm going to invest in this because I know it's going to make a lot of money, because I know the future, because I know what's going to happen. Obviously not. So I will say, from that perspective, there is an element of luck. But, however, there is also an element of knowledge and foresight as well involved, because there's a lot of stories of people who have bought Bitcoin, let's say at $1, went to $10, they made 10 times their money, and they sold. They said, great, I put in $10,000 in Bitcoin, I just made $100,000, awesome, I'll take my money and go. And then what ended up happening? Well, Bitcoin went to $100 and $1,000 and then $10,000. I was about to say $1 million, not yet. But it made all of these returns. And so what ended up happening is these individuals didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the foresight, they didn't bother to do enough research into Bitcoin, they didn't, or for whatever other fundamental reason, they didn't believe that Bitcoin was one of these assets that was going to be as powerful as it ended up being. And so what did they do? they sold. They sold at a very early level. You can see a lot of examples on this on Twitter. I posted a recent tweet of a gentleman who bought at $1 and then it sold at $8. And then he was really, really sad that Bitcoin started trading at like $20 or $30 after that. Terrible, right? Super unlucky. But again, if you don't understand what it is that you're investing in, how can you possibly hold something like Bitcoin? You have to think about it from that perspective. If I buy Bitcoin and I'm a classical investor and I just made 10 times my money, in what other realm are you making 10 times your money? Very, very few. And so it makes a lot of sense for you to obviously cash that out if you do not understand why Bitcoin just did a 10x. If you don't understand the reasoning behind it, there is never going to be enough willpower within you to actually keep those iron hands and hold your Bitcoin because you don't understand it. You don't know why it's going up. You don't understand why you should hold. You're just seeing a number on your portfolio tracker and go, oh, well, I just made 10x. Cool. Sell, sell, sell. And then it goes 10x beyond that. And you just missed out on a Lambo or a villa or a mansion, whatever, right? So this is one of the things that even though there's an element of luck involved, yes, that's true. Had to be in the right place, had to be in the right time. There's also an element of foresight. You had to be able not to sell. The other thing is people think of Bitcoin today in 2019 and then they try to retroactively apply what Bitcoin is today to 2011, as if you could somehow know for a fact all of the things that you know now in 2011. So if only you had known about Bitcoin in 2011, you certainly would have invested in it. No. Think about it like this. In 2011, 2012, 2013, the only things, and before and after, the only things that Bitcoin had was a few developers on a GitHub and a Bitcoin talk forum. That was it. There was no BitPay. There was no legitimacy. There was no history. There was no anything. There was no confirmation that this thing was even going to work. No one knew if it was going to work. No one knew if some guy was going to come and figure out how to hack Bitcoin, and that actually did happen at one point. Not a lot of people know this, but there was a method of creating an infinite amount of Bitcoins. Not many people know that, but that happened. And so you're trying to say that you would go back in 2011 or any time then, around then, and you would say, well, if I had known about Bitcoin back then, I certainly would have put all of my money into it, and I would definitely not have sold it until $20,000 in December 17th of 2017. Silly to say. And it's silly to say that you even yourself would have invested in Bitcoin because you did not know. There was no way of knowing. There was no legitimacy. So to try and retroactively apply the legitimacy that Bitcoin has now, the 9 years of history, that 10 years of history that it's had now, to the times back then, not going to fly. And then on the other side, really, who could have guessed, right? Who could have guessed at the time? Who could have known? So most of the people who bought Bitcoin were not people who realized that this was the next evolution of money, that this was going to be the most amazing thing ever. Most people didn't understand it at all. They couldn't wrap their heads around the white paper. And so all they did was they bought a certain amount of Bitcoins. And then as it went up, some of them sold. Some of them decided, why is this going up? Let me learn a little bit more about this. And then they started learning more about it. They started getting more involved. And so as they got more involved and they started learning about the benefits and all these different advantages that Bitcoin has over other coins, they realized, okay, this is actually something really, really interesting that doesn't exist in the world yet. This is the only unique asset of its kind. You know what? I'm going to hold a little bit more. And I'm going to hold a little bit more. And then they're going to keep holding. And as they keep holding, the legitimacy grows. More companies formed around it. More individuals started purchasing and investing in it. And now we live in this world in 2019 where Bitcoin is it's not ubiquitous, but it is one of the most legitimate things you can find. There's very little illegitimacy about Bitcoin. You look at its hash rate, the highest hash rate of anything. It's almost like this global supercomputer is putting all of this hash power into powering Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's the most secure, most unhackable network on the planet. You didn't know that back in 10 years ago. There was no way of knowing. So again, I think I've put both sides of it. You shouldn't think people who got into Bitcoin early are some kind of master investors or geniuses, but you also shouldn't think that they are just lucky, that they just got in there just because they happened to learn about something. Because again, it takes a lot of iron hands to go through all of the FUD, all of the China bans, all of the bad things that happened, all of the bear markets. It takes a lot of will, and not many people actually ended up making it and holding up until today. This video was sponsored by Cryptowatch. Are you a crypto degen? Do you spend countless hours in front of your PC babysitting your leverage trades? Well, babysit no longer. With Cryptowatch, you can spend countless hours in the comforts of your own bed, waiting for those SMS alerts. Track how wrecked your portfolio is that week with their portfolio tracker. And you can also check the price of your favorite shitcoins. If you'd like to join Cryptowatch, there's a link in the description below. Happy trading!